That's the thing. This is supposed to be a positive review, and he's still negative as fuck.
This organized chaos video is brought to you by Gems Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello again. Doing a request today. As I try to get those requests in. If you have any requests, make sure to add them. I know I'm behind. I think I've done a decent job getting them caught up, but yeah, add them up. But this request came through an interesting network. It came through Twitter, which isn't all that shocking. I get plenty of requests through Twitter. But this one came from a response to my response to John Fetterman's tweet, where he was asking Dr. Zoidberg or Dr. Oz. I, of course, voted for Dr. Zoidberg because, of course. I mean, Dr. Zoidberg doesn't understand human anatomy, but he's still miles better than Dr. Oz. But anyways, a real human at a real human. Suspicious name. Hey, OC, I was wondering if you could react to Nerdrotic or Drinker's positive reviews. Bring some positivity to the channel. It would be cool to see your thoughts. And I replied, do you have a video in mind? Also, I think it's been years since Nerdrotic did a positive video. The Batman, House of the Dragon, Top Gun, Terminal List. It's hard to get some Nerdrotic's positive reviews because he does them on live stream and actual videos. The Batman is a good one, though. Now, I haven't really covered Drinkers or Nerdrotic's live streams because I feel like when I cover Geeks and Gamers, I feel like when I go to so many of these guys, it's just a fucking live stream. Nerdrotic and Critical Drinker actually put together crafted videos. They're cringe, but just reacting to live streams is a bit much. But Nerdrotic did do a video on House of the Dragon that was released a few days ago, and let's go and check that out. I have caught up with House of the Dragon, and if you're interested in my complete thoughts, we are actually covering the first 3 episodes on the podcast next Tuesday, as well as the first 3 episodes of She-Hulk and the theatrical edition of Fellowship of the Ring. I haven't seen the theatrical edition in a while, so that'll be fun. The battle will be on the podcast next Tuesday. But let's see this House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon, a good prequel to an epic failure. And I want to just observe the fact that he can't just call House of the Dragon good. He has to put some negative in there. He has to talk about how Game of Thrones sucked. He has to be a little bit negative. He can't just be positive. And we got Matt Smith as a pimp. It looks like Daenerys in the background screaming. And Whoopi Goldberg as Mother Abigail. Because, reasons. Yeah, I'm no fucking idea why he planted that one in there. But okay, let's see.
Everybody, focus.
It's like...
Oh my... We're coming, man!
Okay, it's fairly self-explanatory, but this is the scene from Doom Patrol where everybody's coming. Okay. Are we gonna play this whole scene with just people's names over stuff?
Nerdrotic.
Did he maybe hire the Quarterings editor who does that stuff? I don't know.
Nerdrotic.com.
It's been 4,064 days since the release of the last book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series, A Dance with Dragons. And it's been 1,205 days since the disastrous finale of Game of Thrones Season 8.
Best season ever!
And here we are finally talking about the...
I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I like the storyline they had worked out for Season 8 of Game of Thrones. the execution was really fucking lazy. Like, so goddamn lazy. It drives me nuts.
House of the Dragon, because I'm a little late on this, a show that's currently delaying Winds of Winter based on a book that delayed Winds of Winter. Before we get to the review, we do have an update from George R. R. Martin about the Winds of Winter. And it sounds pretty good, even though he should have been done with the book by now. I hope to wrap up the storyline for one of the viewpoint characters of Winds of Winter this week. Maybe even two. That's great.
Okay, I'm sure he'll bash him for taking forever. I do want to say a little bit of defense for George R. R. Martin. He's been working on the TV series and stuff like that. And I get it from an artistic perspective. You get working on a project, you work on that project for a really long time, and then you'll get these other different projects that really intrigue you, and you move on to them. And I get why he's getting delayed. I still think he absolutely needs to finish his original series. Absolutely. But I understand how you can get delayed.
Great news! Then he follows it up with this. Meanwhile, work continues on all of the other Game of Thrones successor shows we're developing for HBO and HBO Max. I don't even want to finish. House of the Dragon is based on another unfinished book series, Fire and Blood Part 1, but this story does have an ending, and it's not very good because it's not one of George's best works. As a matter of fact, it's his worst in all of A Song of Ice and Fire. The book is a fake history written by a maester who is an unreliable narrator, sourcing 3 unreliable narrators. On top of that, the Dance of the Dragons story from inside Fire and Blood is based on short stories that have been massively retconned.
But the series isn't told through a narrator or an unreliable narrator, at least not that has been revealed so far, so I'm assuming that's been changed.
Showrunner Ryan Condell has assured us that this will not be an unreliable narrator story. We will get the definitive history.
Oh, well, I need to play the video for a bit longer.
Except for the stuff they get wrong. The episode starts immediately with the Great Council of 101.
Except for the stuff they get wrong. Okay, well, George R. R. Martin's involved with the series. Yeah.
Which was called by the Conciliator.
I get really annoyed with these people who demand things have to be done exactly like the source material because nothing will ever be done exactly like the source material. They're done at different times. It just, there's gonna be differences. Deal with it. The hope is that just it's good. That's your hope.
King Jaehaerys, who has reigned for over 50 years, but he is left without an heir, so he decided to let the realm choose one for him. And when I say the realm, I mean the Citadel, the Sept, and the Great Lords. And immediately the show gets something wrong, at least from Fire and Blood. The final 2 claimants are Viserys Targaryen and Laenor Valerian, Rhaenys' son. Now, Rhaenys does have the better claim, which I don't think they explain very well in this show, but she gets passed over because she's a woman, because we're in a patriarchal, feudalistic society. Now, you would think that HBO is painfully aware of the reaction to Game of Thrones Season 8. So maybe let this new show gain an identity of its own, and let's not, no, never mind, they just give us a blonde girl and a dragon. Now, the bulk of
Well, I don't know if that's avoidable. If you're going to do a prequel series about the Targaryens, who are famous for their essentially bleach blonde hair, not even bleach blonde, platinum blonde hair. Targaryens are famous for their platinum blonde hair and their dragons, which is what Daenerys was. It makes sense that they're gonna have to hit that well again. It's set like 200 years before the Game of Thrones, though, so I mean, it's more than capable of having its own story. We just gotta let it unfold.
Of this show is set up, and I guess our 3 main characters.
Is this supposed to be a positive review? I feel like he's mostly dumping on it still.
Characters are Rhaenyra Targaryen, Alicent Hightower, and Daemon Targaryen. Only one of the 3 will be played by the same actor. We're 9 years into King Viserys' reign, and he is left without a clear heir, a son. His wife, Aemma Arryn, is pregnant currently, but she's already lost 3 children, 1 in the cradle and 2 during childbirth.
Well, here you are, surrounded by attendants, all focused on the babe. Someone has to attend to you.
Now that line sounds like it was written by a male feminist. Attending the baby is attending the mother. What do you expect her to do? Go down to the pub in King's Landing, have a couple of smokes, some pints, and maybe go to Westeros Cella?
Okay, what exactly was said?
Here you are, surrounded by attendants, all focused on the babe. Someone has to attend to you.
Now that line sounds like it was written by a male feminist. Attending the baby is attending the mother.
Yes, but someone, like, they're pointing out there is a difference between taking care of a pregnant woman's baby and taking care of the pregnant woman. They're saying nobody's taking care of her needs. They're just taking care of her needs insofar as what the baby needs. That's all they're saying. Yeah. Is this a positive review?
What do you expect her to do? Go down to the pub in King's Landing, have a couple of smokes, some pints, and maybe go to Westeros Cella?
No, but she could relax. There's all types of things that could help the baby inside her womb that won't necessarily help the mother. Perhaps they're giving her a diet that's entirely just helpful to the baby. There's nuances to this shit, dude.
Aaron responds to her daughter Rhaenyra with a quote from famous feminist Randall Tarley: "The birthing bed is our battlefield." And yes, they're laying on the whole patriarchy thing pretty thick, and I am completely aware of the kind of messages and themes George R. R. Martin puts in his books, but as much as I criticize him, the man is not heavy-handed as this. The show settles down a little.
The show is pretty heavy-handed. They have plenty of lines in there where the women talk about wanting to rise up from the patriarchy, and the patriarchy just being douchebags. It's very much there, dude. I don't know how... Like, how are you judging heavy-handed and not heavy-handed? Because She-Hulk literally just had, like, one scene with her talking about women's problems. And you blew up at that. This show probably has just... Well, there's also the scene where the guy was being a dick to her while she was giving her practice speech. This show probably has just many moments just like that. Why the double standard?
And we finally get some character introduction and some exposition. There's a small council scene with some getting to know you. Half of these lords will be gone because there's a major time jump. And to address the elephant in the room, Corlys Velaryon, whose beard hair doesn't match the hair on his head. And we meet the...
Yeah, that happens with acting in sets and stuff like that. And it could just be naturally his hair's like that, but highly unlikely. It looks fine. What are you looking for, man?
Best character in this show, by far, Matt Smith's Daemon Targaryen.
Wonder if he's gonna talk about him like he's the hero, because he's totally the fucking villain here. At least 2 episodes in, he's the villain.
Sitting on the Iron Throne, meant to remind us of Jaime Lannister sitting on the Iron Throne. And yes, this is the first time we get to see the throne room, and it is different, and it looks terrible. This is what the Iron Throne is supposed to look like in the books, and why not just do this? Now, it sounds like I'm being a little hard.
Well, as far as the prequel series, that's pretty much what they did. For the original series, they may not have had the budget to do something quite as elaborate, and here that looks pretty good. You're not going to get a one-to-one translation. You know that, right?
On the show, I actually don't think it was that bad. It has some pretty cringe dialogue at times, and it has some brilliant scenes. It looks great. It's already better than the Rings of Power, but that's not really saying much.
Rings of Power isn't even out. I think as of recording this, it came out 2 hours ago. I haven't seen it. Like I said, the Rings of Power doesn't look good, but I don't know if it's any... I don't know how it compares to House of Dragon because I haven't fucking seen it. And you haven't seen it because you released this a few days ago.
Now, we were told this show would try to be more book accurate, and...
That's the thing. This is supposed to be a positive review, and he's still negative as fuck.
In some ways, yes, you can clearly see the banners, and there's much more pageantry with the houses, and in some ways, no, including a werewood in King's Landing. Too bad Sansa missed that one. Also in this scene, they're trying to insinuate that there's a bit of a crush between Rhaenyra and Alicent, and that one's new too. There's a scene between Viserys and Aemma that obviously sets up something much bigger later where she tells him she can't have any more kids. She's managed to have 1, she's lost 3, and that's it. But there is one line that I guess in current year could be considered controversial.
We do understand that nothing will cause the babe to grow a cock if it does not already possess one.
It wouldn't be Game of Thrones on HBO if we didn't get the first of our 2 gratuitously violent scenes. This one is with already fan favorite Daemon Targaryen, played by Matt Smith, and quite frankly, he's my favorite too. He was brilliant in this. He chewed up scenery and chopped off balls. They tried to fit a lot into the scene, and I know some people thought it was over the top, but this is a show directed by Miguel Sapochnik, the director of Battle of the Bastards. Now, Daemon Targaryen is the one that made the City Watch what it was. He gave them their gold cloaks. There's another getting to know you small council scene, this time focusing on Daemon Targaryen, and half the council obviously doesn't like him, including Otto Hightower. Now, they might have some good reason. They're worried he might be another Maegor the Cruel. Who was Maegor the Cruel? Just an all-around bad guy who was the king before Jaehaerys. He usurped the throne, destabilized the
I haven't said too much. He's sprinkling little bits of cringe, but it's mostly just reciting what happens in the episode. There's not much to say.
realm and was generally cruel. So while Daemon Targaryen is going to obviously be the fan favorite Oberyn Martell meets Jaime Lannister, Otto Hightower might be
Oberyn Martell meets Jaime. I guess. I mean, Jaime Lannister starts out as quite a bastard at the beginning, so guess it's possible.
our Tywin Lannister. Not too sure about that one. Ralph Fiennes is a great actor, but didn't really see it in this episode.
Ralph Fiennes? Rhys Ifans? Ralph Fiennes is a very different actor, dude. Just FYI, we can all mess up, but Jesus Christ, dude, come on. It's not Ralph Fiennes.
The thing they made very obvious was the Hand of the King, but not the Lord of the Hightower. Otto doesn't like Daemon very much. Now, it wouldn't be Game of Thrones on HBO without boobs and booty, and we get it from the 11th Doctor. I did not expect to see 11th Doctor ass in this episode.
Yeah, I'll be blunt. The 11th Doctor was actually much more buff than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting him in bad shape, but Jesus Christ, he's pretty buff.
Oh, I'm never saying that again. Fine.
And I'd really not like to see it again. Now, Daemon is getting down, but can't quite bring it home with Mysaria, or Lady Misery, or the White.
I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but I mean, he looked good. It's like
Worm, the unofficial mistress of Whisperers. Daemon's a little worried he's going to get passed up in the succession, and he has very good reason. King Viserys is so sure he's going to have a boy, he's already called a tournament with all the great lords coming to King's Landing to witness the birth of his male heir. And this is the big scene in the show where they intercut the tournament with the birthing scene.
With the birthing, it was the same. We really wanted to see the female perspective because it's a realistic portrayal of things that used to happen at the hands of men to women.
At this point, I would like to talk about any of the creatives who are working on this show. If you want your work to speak for itself, I would just focus on talking about your work and not trying to relate some of it to real world events that.
What's wrong with relaying it to real world events? Okay, it's not like they paused the show to talk about Roe versus Wade or something like that. It's not in the show. If you want to hear what inspires things in the show, yeah, they should absolutely talk about what inspired elements of the show or what influences they're going into the show. They should absolutely be talking about this. But behind the scenes stuff is meant for shit like that. Don't complain about it.
That you obviously shot months, maybe even a year before that event actually happened.
Do we know that? Do you know that, dude? That is not a scene that requires a whole lot of special effects. That's not. Roe versus Wade was a few months ago. Yeah, maybe. But maybe upon editing it together, they were like, wow, this reflects on this. You don't know that. Maybe it did play into it. You don't know.
Stop virtue signaling. It just pisses people off.
I hate that virtue signaling. Actually, listen, Nerdrotic. What you're doing right now is a virtue signal as well. You need to stop virtue signaling. You're talking about how, virtue signaling is bad. You're virtue signaling. You're literally virtue signaling that virtue signaling is bad. That's what you're doing. As a public figure, all you can do is kind of virtue signal to say, like, what your stances are on stuff. You don't have real political power. So I don't have a huge issue with people virtue signaling for good things Unless those people have real political power and virtue signal for good things and then fight for bad things. That's the only issue I have with virtue signaling. If you have political power, you virtue signal good things, then fight for bad things behind the scenes, then your virtue signal is worthless. If you're just a Joe Smo or somebody who works on a TV show or something like that, that's all you got. So all you can do is virtue signal.
Despite the brain-dead remarks from Miguel Sapochnik, I thought this scene could have been absolutely brilliant. Now, half of it was. The other half, it was okay. I like some of it, but on further review, tourneys are violent, and Targaryens can get away with whatever the hell they want. So yes, I could see Daemon Targaryen tripping a horse, and nobody would say jack shit about it. The only problem I guess I had was the cold-blooded murders of highborn knights. I think some houses would have some serious problems with that. I can certainly see 1 or 2 deaths during a tournament, but 5 or 6? The quote-unquote explanation.
It's a fairly violent tournament. It might happen. You should probably expect that out of a tournament. 5 or 6 deaths, yeah. I wouldn't think that'd be extreme. It's a very violent tournament.
For this from Rainey's is some of that cringe dialogue I was talking about.
These nights are as green as summer grass. None have known real war.
This is a positive review. He's talking about so much being cringe and bad. This is a positive review from him.
Their lord sent them to the tourney field with fists full of steel and balls full of seed.
The birthing scene, on the other hand, trying to keep out of my mind what Miguel Sapochnik, the director of The Long Night, said about it.
Well, don't watch behind the scenes if you don't want to know what they were thinking of when they were putting shit together. Just don't do it, dude.
Was still brilliant and brutal. Meanwhile,
I mean, if his delicate snowflake brain can't handle that maybe the people who put together this show have different ideals than he does, yeah, don't watch that shit.
Back at the tourney, we're introduced to Sir Criston Cole along with Rhaenyra and Alicent, the son of a steward to Lord Dondarrion, who apparently now is Dornish. That's new as well. I guess we needed some Dornish representation. Now, the Maesters told...
Is he parodying himself with that? Dornish representation? He's the one that... I'm really confused by that. Like, Dorne's not a real place. Dornish representation doesn't mean anything. But he's the one that's, like, all, like, shocked about representation. I don't even know what to make of this positive review that still bitches about stuff. This is a weird experience. His positive reviews are really fucking negative.
Viserys that he had a very tough decision to make. Either lose both the wife and the son, or just the son. Honestly, as cold-blooded as it sounds, that doesn't sound like a very hard decision. I think the mother would make the same decision. I liked the scene, and then I heard what Miguel Sapochnik said about it, and I felt a little differently. Now, this is where I will suggest...
Again, dude, you're being a snowflake. If you don't want to know behind-the-scenes shit, don't watch behind-the-scenes shit. Filmmakers might have different ideas than you do. They might have different ideologies than you do. If you don't want to know that, if you can't handle if it's different, don't fucking watch it.
To HBO, maybe you should just not have these post-show recaps with the directors. Did you kind of forget about Danny Kind of Forgot? King Viserys very sadly loses his wife and his son, and they have a funeral, and all the King's Guard decide to stand behind the funeral pyre. I also thought this was one of the better scenes with Daemon Targaryen because you see he does actually care about his family. Otto Hightower sends his very young daughter in to comfort the king, which is obviously setting something up, and King Viserys and I are kindred spirits. We both like our action figures and dioramas. Daemon decides to drown his sorrows or celebrate, and this was something that was left kind of ambiguous in the book, and it's not so ambiguous here. He does appear to toast his brother's dead son, Balon, the heir, for a day.
Yes, it's things that are ambiguous in the book may not be ambiguous in the show because they're different mediums. They will be told differently. Just don't say it has to be exactly the same. It's impossible. It is literally impossible for them to be exactly the same. Impossible.
Otto Hightower rats out Daemon to Viserys, and this is where the trouble begins. King Viserys summons Daemon to confront him about the heir for the day comment, and Daemon doesn't deny it, then follows it up by telling him the truth as he sees it about the small council, Otto Hightower, and then he calls him weak. King Viserys promptly names a new heir and sends Daemon back to the Vale to the wife he never liked. And his new heir is his daughter, Rhaenyra Targaryen, and I'm sure everything's just going to work out fine. And the final scene is Rhaenyra officially being named heir, the lords pledging fealty, and Daemon Targaryen leaving. And as King Viserys is talking to his daughter Rhaenyra, this is where we get the biggest change from the books. The discussion of the Song of Ice and Fire and the Long Night. Now, this was written completely for the show. This is a huge departure from the books, and it could be
Quit judging it based on the book. Judge it on its own merits, dude.
a massive Winds of Winter spoiler or just massive fan service. I'll try to keep this brief. The reason the Targaryens are on Dragonstone is Daenys the Dreamer foresaw the doom of Valyria. In the books, there's a lot of dreams and prophecies. Now, the Targaryens hung out on Dragonstone for a lot of years before they conquered Westeros, which they could have done whenever they wanted because they had dragons. Now they're saying that Aegon the Conqueror conquered Westeros because of his dream of the Long Night. Again, in the books, we have no idea why Aegon the Conqueror wanted to conquer Westeros, but this might explain it. This might also explain why Rhaegar Targaryen took off with Lyanna Stark. This might also explain why Aegon V wanted to hatch some dragon eggs, or the Mad King. Or it could just be fan service, which I think it probably is, because the previous two kings to Viserys, one was appointed and the other one usurped the throne. So how was the information passed to them? Again, this is not only a show that is currently delaying the book The Winds of Winter, the book it's based on delayed Winds of Winter, which made Game of Thrones a complete disaster, and this is still a
No, it's not George R.R. Martin's fault that Game of Thrones Season 8 screwed the pooch. That would be the showrunner's fault. He was involved with the series, as he's involved with this series, but he's not the showrunner. They screwed the pooch on that season. George R.R. Martin, yes, he is getting distracted. He absolutely is. I understand getting frustrated because it's taking him way too long to get this book done. But I also understand as an artist wanting to explore new mediums, explore different storytelling avenues. And there's a solid chance with Winds of Winter, if he had extra time, instead of working on that, he'd just find another project. So there's no telling.
A prequel to that complete disaster. So no matter what happens, all roads lead to Game of Thrones Season 8. The show has potential to be really good or really cringe, especially if they lean into that study of toxic masculinity. It has some other problems too, including a huge time jump, meaning some characters you might get attached to are going to be played by completely different actors later on. And the one big difference, this one actually has an ending. It's just not a very good one. And I'm not sure what good it's going to do to bring up the Long Night other than to remind everybody about Game of Thrones. In this story, unless there's radical changes, you might see Winterfell, but you're not going to see the Wall. You're not going to see the lands of always winter, the Night's Watch, the White Walkers, the Others, any giants, any wildlings, nothing. Again, I was late on this one, and I could go on, but we have an entire season to cover. Overall, I thought the episode was slow at times, some cringe dialogue. It rallied towards the end, and Matt Smith was brilliant, and it still wasn't enough to wash away the stain of Game of Thrones Season 8. Yet I will be live after every episode with Mahler and other guests at 9:10 p.m. Central.
Okay, he's just talking about his live. I will not be covering those live streams. Those things are like 2 hours long. No fucking way. No fucking way. But that is a positive review from Nerdrotic. And that is weird. Like, I would say that might be the best Nerdrotic video I've seen on his main channel outside of the older ones. The older ones are better. But that might be the best one I've seen. Still, a lot of cringe. Still, like, even though that's a positive fucking review, he is intensely negative throughout that thing. Like, what does he say that's good about? He likes Matt Smith. What else? What else did he say that was positive? Some scenes were well shot. Most of it's like just comparing it to the book or bitching about the cringe dialogue. That is weird. that's a positive review. I know when I watch something that I like, usually the beginning will be kind of front loaded with stuff that I dislike, that I kind of want to get out of the way so I can talk about the stuff I like. That was just kind of like negative shit sprinkled throughout as he just describes the episode. That was and of course that thumbnail was cringe as fuck. I love how Whoopi Goldberg's shoved in there for no goddamn reason. Yeah. Fucking cringe neurotic still. Blah. He does not know how to go positive without just being mostly negative. Just judge the episode on its own merits. Ignore Game of Thrones. Ignore the source material. Judge it on its own merits. Does it work? I thought it worked quite well. I compared it to She-Hulk earlier. There's definitely comparisons in the feminist dialogue, I'll say. But I will say House of the Dragon is a much better put together episode so far. I thought She-Hulk was fine, but yeah, House of the Dragons was really good. Yeah. Critique the episode, dude. Just the episode. If you want to do a comparison, that's a whole separate video, but critique the episode. That's a review.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
Do you enjoy pain?
Pain don't hurt.